Yes, I'm going to start with, I'm aware that you're not, that you don't find personal history important, but still I would like to ask you some questions about your life and your background.
Mm-hmm.
So, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up, and in what kind of family?
I grew up in northwest Germany up to the age of 13. My father was a journalist, my mother a housewife. Then my parents got divorced when I was 12, and my father dropped out of conventional life and society. He was an early dropout before the term dropout even existed, and he went to live in Spain. So my parents got divorced, my father left to live in Spain, and I was very unhappy at school. So at 13 I refused to go to school any longer. That was my only act of rebellion as a child. I was on the whole a very meek, obedient child, but something within me prevented me from going to school. I just couldn't do it anymore. So I stopped. My mother didn't know what to do with me. So finally it was decided that I should join my father in Spain, who had remarried, and lived a very unconventional life. He lived on his savings for a few years, and then he started working there. So I spent my teenage years from 13 to 19 in Spain, and so the Spanish language became my second language, and I was taken out of the culture that had surrounded me for the first 13 years of my life, and then placed in a completely different environment and culture. And that probably was a good thing, because if one spends one's whole life in one particular cultural environment, one tends to become conditioned by that particular culture without knowing it. So by experiencing different cultures as a child, that somehow perhaps made the cultural conditioning less deep, less rigid. And my father was always a very unconventional person. Some people would call him eccentric. So when I got to Spain, he asked me, "Do you want to go to school here?" And of course I said no. And so he said, "Okay, then don't go to school and do what you like." And that's what I was able to do. I was reading certain books that I liked to read, studying. I began reading some literature. I went to language classes in the evenings and afternoons, and studied some other subjects that I was interested in, like astronomy and so on. So I grew up without, especially in my teenage years, without the pressure that most youngsters experience. And then at 19 I went on my own to live in England.